Hello, and welcome to the final session of Sustainability in the Art Studio. I want to welcome all of the artists that I've had the pleasure of working with this spring, and I also want to welcome all of the members from ecoartspace who are joining us today. It's great to have you. Over the last 3 months, class participants have been engaging their environment and community through personal projects exploring natural art processes, environmentalism, and interpersonal healing, inspired by topics that we've discussed throughout the class. We've also had the pleasure of learning from guest artists Michelle Brody, Annette Nikel, and Bibonkwe or Jude Norris from Eco Art Space. So I want to thank them. And I also want to thank Patricia from Eco Art Space and Yvonne from the Center for Art Education and Sustainability for making the opportunity to teach this class possible. It's been so productive and inspiring to work with these artists who, in their diverse ways, are committed to human-environment relations in their practice. So today, participants are going to give a brief presentation of the work that they've been up to for the last couple of months. And I'm also going to ask that I just threw a link in the chat. Oh, sorry, I threw a link in the chat for my website if you'd like to learn more about this particular class. And we will also be teaching another version in the fall through Eco Art Space with 3 new guest artists. And lastly, I'm going to throw a link in the chat for today's presentations where anyone anybody participating in this is welcome to share and leave a comment about the presentations that they see today. Feel free, you could use the chat function on Zoom, but if it's all right with you, I would love for you to rather put them in this Google Doc so that all of the presenters can access these comments later. And feel free to leave your email if you want to get in touch with them, or you can also look them up in the Eco Art Space directory if you want to learn more about their practices. And lastly, just to lay down a quick schedule for today, so each person is going to present the order I will throw in the chat, and afterwards, we're going to hold comments and questions for all of the presentations until after everyone has presented to make sure we have enough time for presentations. And then I'm going to open it up for comments and questions as a whole group. So with that, I will pass it over to Priscilla, who will be our first presenter. And oh, hopefully Priscilla's here. Maybe she's not.
Priscilla's not here.
Okay, well then we'll be. Oh, Bree, did you have something to say?
Yeah, you know what, I had sent an email. I may need to leave a little early, so I can go in place of Priscilla if that works.
Yes, that would be great. And I'll adjust the Google Doc so Priscilla will be at the top if anybody wants to leave. Or Bree will be at the top in place of Priscilla.
Okay. So go ahead and start now, or?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. Let's see. Is that coming up for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So I wanted to, before I start, I know I don't have a lot of time, but Anna, I just really wanted to thank you for everything that you've brought to this space over the course of this experience, and to everybody that was a part of it, and to Eco Art Space. So my name is Bree, and I'm very new to creating a studio space that is reflective of like organic and natural, and just switching over from photography. I have a bachelor's in photography, and I really kind of fell in love in the darkroom. And so I've been kind of on this quest to finding a way to have a way to process my work and my creative energy. that's reflective of something that's less harsh on the environment. My background is in mapping, so I work for the County of Riverside doing cartography with the assessors department. So I've been trying to find a bridge with all these different threads, and also I've just entered into art education. So my presentation is a little bit of like these bridges of the three. So I'll go ahead and like from the start. So mapping transitions. A portion of this also is that I just had this really major transition in my life where I moved. And so part of me in this work is trying to capture all of that. So I am working on a new cartography for myself, which is where I'm taking old blueprints of mine and I'm creating canvas sheets from them. And you can see I've got some duct tape there on the side because I'm also incorporating that into the pieces that I am now exploring with. So that's this portion. So another part of this piece is that I'd like to incorporate story mapping, which is very illustrative. And I'm not sure if anybody's aware of the Esri software product, but it's a mapping software where you can make story maps. And so part of this is me using this different symbolism to incorporate as illustrations for part of my story mapping. So this is an honoring of, this is also going into the story map. So the top two images here are pines that were cut down by investors. This is the property that I was living on. And so this experience was very heartbreaking for me. And what I've been doing with it is I collected pieces of these trees and I've been creating my artwork. So I live in Southern California, so we also have a lot of fires. This is charcoal that found charcoal that I've used to create a drawing on a piece of the tree itself. And this is more of like a breakdown. So I've been exploring different ways to like color extract and bring things from the bark. I kind of like playing around with this idea of creating the same type of imprints that I would in a darkroom photography room. So this is just like me exploring with the bark itself and doing some quick drawing sketches. And then this here is what I've been doing in the classroom. So I've been really trying to incorporate ways to do map making with the children. So here we are exploring map making, use of organic material, processing through grids, which is a good way to start mapping with children, using the egg binders, found objects, natural material, and pigment, and of course having fun, because when we play, it's easier to just use the material in a fun way. And so this is some images of some recent work that I've been doing with the kids. So so yeah, this has just been kind of the start of me like moving into this different way of creating. And it's been a really good experience, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how all of these things will continue to grow in my work. So thank you.
Thanks, Bree. I have so many questions about map making, but I'll save that for later. Next up is Jason Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. You guys hear me all right? All right. I'm going to try full screen mode, so sometimes that throws things off. Okay. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
All right. The class for me was interesting. I took it for many reasons, and partway through realized, or pretty early on realized, that my medium of photography, especially digital photography in and of itself, does not have a significant impact on the climate or create environmental issues for my studio itself. So I started focusing more on where does my impact come from, and found that the travel to create the work is really where most of my impact comes from. One inkjet print creates about 5 grams of CO2, as an example. A recent project took me to Argentina with a crew of 3. The flights for the crew created 2,000 kilograms of CO2, or 2 million grams of CO2. So the difference between 5 grams for an inkjet print versus 2 million grams, or 2 million grams of CO2 for my flights. That's what I really started thinking about a lot. I should also just mention quickly that my studio was built with green LEED certified, or remodeled green with LEED certification, and it produces 100% of energy with solar power. My heating and cooling comes from geothermal. So I'd already went through a lot of processes like that in my studio itself. So I started thinking about the best way for me to have a more green studio. And I feel that that is through creating work that has more of an impact on people, hopefully creating positive change. So this is a project that I was working on before the class started. And so I tried to finalize the project, do the color work on the prints, do the artist statement, write a bio. So focusing a lot on how to get the work out there into the world and have it have an impact. So the River Underground examines the impact of agriculture on the land, our climate, and most importantly, its implications on our environmental future. With this project, I started a conversation about the consequences of our actions, particularly the use of drainable tiles or drainage tiles, to expose the invisible and find a more sustainable way forward. To call attention to this subject, I've created a series of aerial images of drainage tiles in farm fields that are at once seductive, painterly, and troubling. The dark lines in the photographs are evidence of where the soil was disturbed and the drainage tiles are buried. Millions of miles of hidden tiles make up a network of underground rivers flowing beneath farm fields in the Midwest. The tiles help drain water off the flat farm fields faster, decrease soil erosion in the field, and increase crop yields. They also create a 4-fold increase in nitrogen pollution in rivers, harming water quality and increasing greenhouse gas production in waterways. Microbial denitrification converts the nitrogen into nitrous oxide, which is 298 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, therefore having a more significant impact on climate change. Agriculture accounts for 10% of our greenhouse gas emissions. Drainage tiles are complicated. They have positive and negative environmental effects. More research is needed to find the best solutions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from our food production. And with the river underground, I hope to begin that conversation. These unseen infrastructures need to be dug up and viewed in the light of day, lest they fool us into taking the monoculture industrial landscape around us for granted. Robert Michael Morrissey. So the other thing that I have realized over the last few years and became more apparent in the class is that the Midwest is often overlooked in climate change and environmental issues in general. We tend to focus on the oceans, the coast, and the mountains. So I'll just quickly go through some of these images. So you can see in the top left there, there's a grain bin, which are,
Jason, just to make sure we're looking at the same thing you are, we just see the River Underground first slide that you showed.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've been going through multiple slides.
Oh.
Let me try. Okay. Now what do you see?
Most of my impact comes from the travel to create.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's moving.
All right. So these are the slides I went through. I mean, it basically repeats what I said. All right. Now, are you guys seeing an aerial image?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the top left image, top left of that image, the silver thing, that's a grain bin, which is multiple times larger than a normal home, just to give you a sense of scale. And that's it.
Wow, those are wild. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, guys.
Next up is Katie. Let me see if I have the email.
It'll take a couple minutes to download, so you could maybe download that while somebody else is going if you want.
Okay. I think, let's see. Well, it's coming up. Also, a couple people emailed at last minute that they're sick, so I think we're all right on time. Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, so I thought I'd start with just kind of a brief background of the project and the history. So this was actually an older project that I did where I took part of my backyard or the space that I occupy and turned it into something more sustainable by taking out the grass and creating more of a pollinator habitat and that type of thing. So I really wanted to take this class to kind of think about, I wanted to revisit that project because it's kind of an ongoing thing, but do it in a more sustainable way as I'm creating the actual artwork itself. So again, talking about, thinking about how to use less toxic chemicals in the darkroom, how to use less actual materials. For example, these were mounted on board and I don't want to continue to do that. So this was actually, if you want to go to the next slide, there's a couple more examples there too, but I really wanted to just explore the theme more so than the actual replication of the process. I wanted to create a new process based on what I learned in this class, but use the theme of transforming the land into something more sustainable and being more of a steward as an artist and thinking about the connection and transformation. So if you go to the next slide, there's a couple more examples of that too, but it was largely based on the idea of creating more of a sustainable space for not only the pollinators, but the entire ecosystem in this area, because everything kind of ripples out from that. There's a lot more birds and in this particular space that has less toxic chemicals being used as opposed to like a city park or pristine space here in the city. So as I was thinking about this project, I was actually thinking about going through more of an actionable and process oriented idea versus a product oriented outcome. So on the next slide, if you want to go one more, this was just basically the notes from the class and the main themes that I took from the class as far as thinking about working creatively and collaboratively with the ecosystem and more of a reciprocal relationship, as in what I'm giving to the environment and what am I getting back from that environment. And thinking about art on a nature-based time instead of our typical time-based system. So again, thinking about just how I could create something that was more reciprocal and beneficial to not just myself, but to the environment that I cohabitate with as well. So, so next slide, as I was thinking about coming up with a project plan, I remember that last fall, actually, I was just sitting in this parking lot and I was thinking, wow, that's an interesting, just like urban nature kind of space is not maintained or whatever. What if I just threw out some seeds from this milkweed plant that I happen to have from my backyard? Because it's really, nobody's really maintaining it. Nobody's mowing it. Nobody's, really even caring for it. But here's this little oasis of nature in the middle of the Safeway parking lot. So I figured nobody's going to care. I'm going to plant some seeds, see what happens. So I went back just a couple weeks ago, actually, and these milkweed plants are doing really well. So they're actually kind of taking over this space. They really, like I said, they haven't had any care other than what nature's done for itself, because, often nature does better than we do anyway. So I took the idea of that and I thought, well, what if I expand that to other areas in the city here in Fort Collins? So I took that idea and I thought, well, what if I found spaces near my house? You can go to the next slide. And thought about, how do I actually find spaces that I can use that would be beneficial, and what plants would I use? So the nice thing is there's actually a project through the city right now. They're paying people to remove grass and to put in native plants, drought resistant xeric native plants. So I did a lot of research on what would be good, what particular milkweed, because there's a lot of different kinds of milkweed are native to Colorado. And so these are the two particular ones that benefit monarchs specifically, since they use them as their habitat, but bees and other pollinators. So the kind of funny thing is the city also has a program that allows people to complain if you have too many dandelions or weeds in your yard, which is kind of funny, since that's kind of the most native plant that you could possibly come up with around here is the dandelion. But anyway, so using those two plants, I thought, okay, let's start with that. Let's create a plan. You can go to the next slide. And just use what I have. And so I started growing the seeds that I had from the previous plants that were in my yard. They're actually doing really well. There's about 50 of them growing of the two different varieties now. You can go to the next slide. And I thought, well, I've actually got to create something that looks vaguely like art too, and do something in the studio. So I looked around and saw what I had. And I had some really nice seed paper that I've been trying to figure out a way to use. So this was actually a failed print, but it was a cyanotype print that was one of the least non-toxic processes you could use, that I actually tried to tone, but it's such well-made paper in terms that it uses such recycled material, and it breaks down easily, that basically it could fall apart fairly easily. So I actually had a really good print that did just kind of do that, and I was like, but this was not a very good print. So we actually had a freeze last Friday, and I thought, well, that would make a great mulch. So I put it around this little showy milkweed that's in my backyard that I planted, and it's doing pretty well. And it kind of protected and blanketed the plant and actually came up as a nice image. So continuing on the studio work into the next slide, I was wanting to play around a little bit with some natural toning, just using what I had as well. So just a couple examples of that, just coffee, tea, and blueberry juice. And the last one was kind of fun, just had a little vodka laying around too. Thought I'd throw that in just for a little different type of toning. And then I continued to try just different processes. And then, so you can advance through in the next few slides and just flip through some of the prints that were made and toned. This is actually on seed paper. This was a cyanotype that was toned and just drawn with pomegranate juice on the bottom there. And then this was another toned image. This was actually a digital print on seed paper. After listening to Jason talk about the digital impact, I thought, might as well just try it and just play around a little bit in the studio and just have a little fun. So this was actually really good to just experiment and just try different things. And so those were the images that actually came out in the process of waiting for the weather to get warmer, since I couldn't plant because we had a freeze. Again, I'm working with nature's time, not my own. So this is the weather for the next week. It's supposed to get warmer this weekend. So I'm actually hoping to go out and plant. As you go through the next few slides, you'll see that I've located, this are some of the plants that are actually in my house. I just did a little mock-up installation of plants that are waiting to be planted. And then the next few slides are just the unauthorized planting sites that I've identified around my neighborhood. I thought I'd start within my general vicinity because then I can kind of keep an eye on them and make sure they're getting water. And not that they require a lot of water, but just to kind of start out. And yes, yep, this is Colorado. This is Fort Collins. So that is the plan, to actually start the actionable part of this project, hopefully this weekend. But I appreciate everything from you, Anna, and this has been just an amazing learning experience from everybody in this class. So thank you all.
Oh, great presentation. Thank you, Katie. Next up is Ava. Do we have Ava here? Oh, Ava didn't make it either. And okay, after Ava is Belinda.
Okay, let me see. So I need to share my screen, which is, so I have to find the share. How do I share my screen? Oh, share screen right there. Okay. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Hi, this is the slide presentation I put together for the sustainability and the art studio practice. I went through and kind of analyzed a lot of the materials that I'm using and how sustainable they were. So that process took me a little while and some research, and I looked for more eco-friendly art supplies. One of the first decisions I made was that I didn't want to just throw out a lot of the materials that I already had. So I found this Crash Paint Solids. It's a golden paints that it's a cleaning system so that the acrylics and don't go down into the water supply when you wash your brushes. And there's lots of other ways to do it too, but this one I thought I'd try this first, just because the others, this is a little bit more instructions, so it's more eco-friendly. And then I looked at the pigments, and I looked through the different kinds of pigments, and I found the natural earth pigments, and I like them. They're fairly easy to use, and I like the way that the pieces turn out, the colors. It's still getting used to it. And then I found a gesso from the natural earth paints that. Then I found these Cobra water-based oil paints, which I actually really like. They've really developed the water-based oil paints they've got them so that the colors and they work really well now. So I'm very happy with that, and they're much more eco-friendly. And whoops. And then I found this bamboo mixed media paper that is. It's actually wonderful. It's really nice to work on. And these are a couple of pieces that I did with the eco natural earth paints. And and then, in going through and thinking about what I went to Bonnie Doon, which is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. They had a fire, the lightning fires in 2020 that went through the redwoods there, and gathered some of the charcoal and wood to make inks and charcoal. I have a friend that lives in that area. And so I made homemade inks from the Bonnie Doon fire. It was actually incredible to go visit it, because the new growth coming out it just made you feel like it was really hopeful, like this is going to come back, it's going to be okay. So that was a pretty incredible experience to visit that. And then I also made homemade inks from vegetables, and that's been really kind of fun to do too, to explore that. And then I started with, I have a quill pen. So this is some of the ink from Bonnie Doon, and charcoal, and I did some drawings and kind of played with how to use that. And then eventually I did this. So this is the first piece of the series where I was using the Bonnie Doon ink and charcoal and on the bamboo paper. And then this is the second piece. I was thinking of the emotions going through the fires and trying to process it. And then this was the last piece that I finished with it.
Sorry, Belinda.
And then I took some of the wood and I planted native plants around it. And I've been watching the native plants grow around the burnt wood. And it's in my backyard. And then the other thing that I found out in my research was that the seed bank under the ground has seeds and flowers that they don't become activated unless there's a fire. So this Baker's Globe Mallow is a rare flower that blooms only after fires. So this has been blooming in our area where the fires were, which I thought was a really kind of, it's tragic, but beautiful, and shows the resilience of nature. And then the next steps, I want to explore ecofeminism. I think I spelled that wrong, more in depth. So I'm gonna read some books about the history of it. And I want to I found some bamboo paper that I placed an order on for larger pieces that I'm going to start morphing the tree rings into fingerprints and explore more of that, which I'm very excited about. And then the other thing I want to do is the city next to us is planning on culling some geese. So I've been kind of active on trying to get them to stop that. But then I realized I had to go get some of the geese, the feathers from the geese, and make quill pens and pictures of the geese. So then I'm going to try to make them stop. We're trying to get them to stop their plans to cull the geese. So that was I thought this class helped me kind of think about how I can kind of explore more of using eco-friendly materials and activism in a way that might make a difference in my area. So thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. The theme of transformation is certainly coming up a lot in the last few presentations. Next, I think we'll probably see more of it too. Michelle is next.
Hello, how are you today? I have to speak carefully because I have stitches all over me in my mouth in particular. Well, basically in my mouth. So I will go quickly, and I'm just going to go to share, and I go to share screen, and I have to pick my presentation here. I have my presentation. I think I clicked it, share. There we go. And I'm just going to make it large, and I will speak right now. My presentation is called Regeneration, Environmental Arts and Being. And I first start off acknowledging that I live and work and play on the ancestral and unceded traditional territories of the Halkomen and Pennacotan speaking people, that is the Polish, part of the Polish Salish people. Oh, I will go to my next slide slowly. I got into regeneration this is just to go back to my last presentation to update those who are not familiar with what I said. I'm looking at regeneration beyond sustainability for many reasons. And I'll try to go into that quickly. What I like about one of the statements I have here is regeneration cultures study living systems, collaborate with the ecosystem that inhabit, including their natural cycles. I mean, that's a mouthful for me right now. But I want to look at improving all the conditions, conducive to life. And so I look at art and what we're learning right here with environmental arts as part of that process. My organic studio, which I call my organic studio, I talked about last time, and I'm getting more ideas as I listen to the others today. But I just want to bring up that I talked about recycling used sales last time, and I'm going to show you my latest acquisition at the end as part of my canvas for the future. And important to me is the regeneration of my mindset, me, the person. I updated my organic practices here. I've got a slide here. Since the last presentation, I've attended a number of workshops. The wonders of Salish seeds. I'm becoming familiar with the life that exists, the beings that exist. Got involved in a mural workshop, which is, again, sustainable practices. And I also got into regenerative gardening, the community gardening workshop, all tied in to what my approach is to the environment and environmental art. I'm collaborating. I love the word collaborating because this is what this is all about. And, in future directions, on the 27th, I'm part of the Nature Club here. I'm the program director, so I have a forest bathing workshop. I'm bringing somebody from the mainland. I should say I'm in Vancouver. I'm sorry, in British Columbia on Salt Spring Island, for those who are not familiar where I'm coming from. And I'm bringing, somebody is going to be presenting a forest bathing workshop. I also, and tied into that collaboration approach that I'm using right now, I have met an artist here on the island who is also into forest bathing, and she's going to be presenting a workshop on painting and nature. So I'm looking forward to that. One thing that's come across from my future direction, and it's just blowing my mind in the last little while, is repurposed art and esteem punk, which is, and I've made a couple of acquisitions, and I'm looking at anything I can salvage and how I can make it into art. But because of our limited time and my limited power to speak, I'll just stop speaking about it. Now, my project for the future will be addressing, documenting through art the beings of the Salish sea. What's important, and I use the word beings, my topic, environmental beings. One of the things lately, in all the presentations, being marine, dealing with nature, dealing with gardens, I brought up the collaboration and connectivity of all these things, of all these beings now. I call them things, ants and insects. That connectivity is unbelievable. So this is where I'm trying to go with my art. Okay. And Jude Norris inspired me in her presentation. There's a number of portfolios that I'll be working on. And I'm trying to look at these portfolios in the context of regenerating humans as part of nature. And this latest approach or strategy will look at environmental art and beings. I talk about beings in more than yeah. These are my being projects. This is the Salish Sea, which runs from the coast of Seattle through right up to Alaska, along the Canadian Pacific, as well as the Northwest Pacific of the state. That's my inspiration. Marine beings, I just took this photo right here because I just took it the other day, and there was this seashell or shellfish, starfish, right there, and I'm getting near my ending. I'm talking about being projects, repurposing sails. I was given this huge sail, which I just hung up to in the backyard of the show. That will be part of the canvases that I will use for my creations, whatever happens. The technique I'm going to be used are I'm looking at, I've come across with collaborating again. It's called Marine Art by Catherine Pan. I'm going to be working with her. She's going to teach me the technique. And this is an example of how you can take an imprint through art with watercolors and inks, which we made ourselves. Anyways, and I get to my favorite part, the thank you from Salt Spring Islands. And I leave my thank yous and appreciation for all the participants. I've taken notes so far. Everybody spoke, and I've just learned so much from this course. And Kate, I can never thank you for this, what you've done for us. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle. And next we have Riva. Also, I hope that you heal up well and fast, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, and I should go into slideshow mode. Is that what I should do?
I would guess so. I haven't used the format that you're on, but
Okay.
oh, you could also,
you're seeing just a full screen, right? Pretty much.
yeah, you could probably
Okay.
hit play there.
I'm going to give it a shot and hope it works. So my practice has been pretty much focused in, I think, sustainable areas for certainly the last several years, where I've been focusing on returning what used to be a lawn, let's say a yard, into a more native habitat, and trying to weed out invasive species, which are everywhere. So a couple of years ago, whoops, that's not how it goes forward then. Let's see. Sorry, you guys. Okay, maybe this is how it goes next. So a couple of years ago, I had my husband mow the lawn, but leave really large circles in it so that I could focus my energy on weeding out the invasive species in the circles. And there are certainly, like, I don't know, one of the circles is actually my vegetable garden, and there are at least 18 circles. I work with circles a lot in my practice. And on the upper right there, you can see that's Japanese stilt grass, which is really invasive in this area. So I was pulling that. And then on the lower right, you can see the one of the oak trees that has self-seeded. So I've been trying to, cultivate the natives and weed out the invasives. And I was really hoping, and what I was exploring through the course of this class was to see how I could turn this practice into more, I don't know, I guess, for lack of a better word, works that were more exhibitable in a way. So I was looking for ways to just develop the practice more, and how to show how to show the practice, right? Other than the actual documentation that I had already been doing. On the left here, you see in the fall where I used all the fallen leaves to just encircle these areas. And then on the right top, you see some mushrooms and moss. And on the lower right, you see some of the things that I've collected on my walks, my daily walks in the neighborhood up a mountain road, and all around actually, because some of that's dogwood kusa, the berry-like things, which aren't native, but I do collect both native and non-native species. Let me just go back a sec. And, I take photographs of them. So I'm trying to plant some of those more native species and grow them. So I'm talking a little bit more about what I have been doing. And now I'm going to switch into I started looking for inspiration of where I could take my practice next. One of the things that I saw was this sort of bundling of natural materials, which is something that comes naturally to me anyway, and something I have done in the past with other things. So this is just kind of an assortment of, I guess for lack of a better word, in a way, a mood board, something to inspire me to move forward. The other thing that I saw, this is the same sort of thing. How do I use the objects and the materials that I find in my practice and create other things with them? Again, something that I've already done, but how can I move it forward? This really inspired me because one of the things, I'm working with a large lawn, or what used to be a yard. I actually call the project This Is Not a Lawn, drawing in circles. So seeing the circular work on the left really inspired me because it's using all these materials, everything, like you can see that crushed can sort of in the foreground along with all these branches. And these are very similar to a lot of the materials that I find in my daily walks through life. We had seen what Slow Maker, and I can't remember her name, but the woman from Down Under who was doing the prints with plant materials.
Annette Nikel.
Annette, right. And so when I saw these really large pieces of, I don't know if these are drawn or it's actual materials on this very diaphanous kind of fabric. Again, it really just speaks to me. And then again, more bundling of fabrics and such, which is also something I play around with a lot. Again, these are mood boards. And in a way, I'm showing you where I was kind of hoping to go. And I'm going to wrap this up by telling you where I actually have ended up, which is very different. So also very inspired by people the more performative aspects of ecological art and how one can insert oneself beautifully into a very, an ecological statement. So this really spoke to me. And again, I have done sort of work like this before, but I guess it's like, how do I return to that and make it more impactful? So the beginning, this is where I was thinking I was going to go, which was small scale wrapping, bundling, twining. I work with some reclaimed wood boxes, and I was wanting to work with some beeswax on them, like Wolfgang Laib uses a lot of beeswax. And then I wanted to bury torn up watercolor papers and leaves inspired by Annette. And then on the larger scale, work with branches and create arches and just create things out of these larger materials and create larger scale works from smaller objects. Well, what I'll say, and I unfortunately can't show you photographs because my iPhone has been dying and I haven't been able to document any of the things that I've been observing, is that going from exploring and experimenting, I've really turned this into more observing things, even though I continue, of course, to explore and experiment. But rather than going larger scale, what I've noticed is that my attention is getting very microscopic. And so what I noticed, and I've been on this, I've lived here for over 30 years, I think. And this is the first time I noticed that by my back door, there's some really huge pine trees, also likely not native, but tiny little pine cones. And I had been thinking, well, gee, I wonder how I could plant them. Well, I didn't need to. There are probably not 100, but quite a few, many sprouting inside pots that were just by the back door. So now I'm going to be cultivating them. I'm going to be paying closer attention and seeing how I can grow those tiny seedlings. I've got a lot of the invasive species have become even more evident to me because this year I convinced my husband not to mow at all. So you've probably, a lot of you have heard of no mow May. So now we didn't mow it, we haven't mowed at all. And that portion, that yard, it's kind of a glorious, wonderful mess. But what I'm noticing is that the Norway maple, which is invasive, and I have several huge Norway maple trees, it's really clear to me how invasive they are because they are everywhere. I mean, there are literally thousands of maple seedlings in what used to be the lawn. And it's also been overtaken by another new native, which I think is Celadon or something like that, which has a native, there are native types of it, but this type is really invasive and really hard to get out. So I'm noticing just how invaded by invasive species the land is here. And it's made me question, actually, sort of like, are we just furthering the whole sort of colonialism idea, in a sense, in our attempt to control nature? Now that we've got these invasives, is controlling that also, it's just bringing up a lot of questions for me, because again, we're trying to change what's happening naturally. And I also look all around and see how everything around here, there's barberry everywhere. Will it make a difference to take it all off my property? I don't know. So it's by observing and really looking at things on sort of a much more intimate scale, I've got a lot more questions, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be producing anything as a result of this, but I've always been really process oriented. And I think I was thinking just before I started to talk that it reminded me of something that I read in one of Susie Gablick's books many years ago, which was that the work of an artist is really the work of their life. Like, an artist's life is their work. So if I'm very inspired by that, and thinking more and more that I really don't have to produce, I just have to be and observe and do what comes kind of naturally. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Riva. Just a quick thought, what comes to mind when you talk about how, like, we're controlling the land as being a colonial endeavor, just thinking about how Native peoples have been not controlling, but like cultivating the land for generations and collaborating with it. And so, yeah, just a thought. I maybe if we had time later, I would have loved to have heard you talk a little bit about the way you described in your last presentation, the magical thinking around these bundles. I thought that was so cool. Okay, next we have Rebecca.
Hi. All right, I'm going to share my screen. All right. Everyone see my screen here? Let's go slideshow. Okay, First of all, thank you for this class. I thought, oh, I'll, pick up some new resources and techniques. And I didn't really know what all I expected, but the breadth of what we covered was really amazing. So thank you for that. It was so great. All right. So I started focusing on, what could I use for substrates? I don't want to be buying any more, commercially made paper. So I really got into making my own. I even experimented using, the dryer lint, which is this one over here on the right, which I gotta say, even though I have a dog and there's some dog hairs in it, it's a little weird. I really like the body and the toothiness of dryer lint paper. It's pretty cool. And this is just sort of traditional paper from, paper scraps and junk mail. And then how do I go forward? There we go. I also wanted to find more alternatives to traditional paints and mark making materials. So the canyon behind my home completely burned to a crisp in the 2019 Getty fire. So I am in no shortage of charcoal. And although I didn't think to use it before this class, and now, I've been going out and collecting it, and that's been great. I'm still into cyanotypes. I found it's a great way to showcase I'm a cultivator of native oak trees. So it's just an easy way to sort of show them off. I love that. And then also in my research, I found oak trees, bark and leaves and acorns are so tannin rich that they serve as really great toners for cyanotypes. Because when I was doing the cyanotypes, they come out that really intense aquamarine blue, which for me is a little too cool and purpley. So when you tone it, it goes more of a blue-green color. And then there's areas where you can get even some sepia tones. So that was really fun to discover. And then in my work, here are some of the cyanotypes I did on top of recycled paper grocery bags and then collage them together. So I'm finding, I really like them and I'm using them in my work. Went down the rabbit hole about botanical inks. Gosh, there's so much information and so many different ways and things that you can use to make inks. It's been really cool. Black walnuts that I foraged in my canyon, I made black walnut ink, which is a really nice sepia tone. Avocado skins make a nice mauve color. The pits make this rich iron oxide color. I've been now I'm starting to mess around with onion skins and some of the wildflowers from the canyon because everything's in bloom right now. And last, there we go, rust dyeing. A buddy of mine is in construction and he likes to collect all the old house numbers from houses they renovate and demo, and he gave me this huge 10-pound bag of all these old house numbers that I just think are so cool because these are, obviously from the 50s and 60s, and I'm like, oh wow, I just love that he saved them. And so I'm doing some rust dyes with those on just some natural fabrics. And then he just gave me a bunch of just, odds and ends, staples and nails from the nail gun. And they just, oh, I love it. I'm just crazy over there. I don't know what I'm going to use them for, but I love this. And yeah, that's it. I'm mostly, yeah, just exploring how to make marks by not using the traditional, especially acrylic based, plastic based materials. That's all I got.
Rebecca, just a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any fading in the avocado inks that you made?
Not yet. So I cut that piece of paper in half. I put it in the window and it's been up there for about a month. And so far it hasn't faded all that much. I used salt and like a little drop of vinegar in it to preserve it. And so far the light fastedness is pretty good.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And with these pieces we're looking at now, the rust dyeing pieces, is that just vinegar and
Just vinegar.
anything else?
I saturated, you can see in the bin, I just poured in straight like white vinegar and I left them there overnight. And somebody did tell, or I read online or something, someone said, oh, you can't leave it too long because the rust will eat through the fabric, but I didn't find that. And then I took these and I even put them through the washing machine and dried them, and they're still really that
Wow.
rich iron oxide color. So
Wow, that is very cool.
yeah.
I wonder what would happen if you added a tannin.
Yeah, right. Next. That'll be next.
Thank you. That was great.
Sure. Stop share.
Okay, next we have, I don't think Beth is here. So after that is Carol.
Hi, everyone. I will hopefully be successful sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes. Also, we're just a heads up, we're doing fine on time. So the last couple of presenters don't feel like you have to rush.
So I do also want to thank Patricia for recommending this course and Anna for you leading it. I'm actually quite emotional about it. I find it was very heart-opening. The discussions that we had as a group were really good and very thought-provoking. So I'm inspired by my natural surroundings. I'm particularly interested in lichen, and both on its the substrate that it's on rock. And okay, why am I not being able to go to my next slide? Okay, I've done something incorrect here. So sorry, I'm going to try this again. Open. Let me share. Where is my arrow? There we go. So sorry. So here's I take a lot of photographs of lichen on my walks. I go for very long walks. I live in Toronto, in Canada, beside the Don Valley, where the Don River runs, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to go down there every day. And then I also explore the Haliburton area, which is northeast of Toronto. So my art practice is really about drawing and mixed media. I do some collage. And I wanted in this course to understand more about how I could have less impact on the earth so that it really supported what my message is, which is how fragile the earth is and our relationship to it. So I needed to decide for my project how I was going to explore something new that I hadn't done before. And I decided to reduce the mark making on my paper by giving nature an opportunity to do some mark making. So I chose to bury my paper. And as the research project at the beginning, as our first step in the course, I chose to bury the paper. It was in March. There was still snow on the ground. It was pretty cold. Putting the paper underneath. This is a friend's urban backyard.
Hey, Carol, do you know you're still showing us just the very first image?
No, I'm so sorry. Because my slideshow is showing me everything. Thank you for letting me know.
You could try stopping share and then reshare and select your whole screen because you may have just shared one window.
Okay, let me do that. I'm gonna do this.
Also, I just heard that there's a memorial for Susie Goblik happening right now, which is just quite timely because we read some of her work in the class. So I just wanted to lift her spirit up.
Question of which screen do I pick? Is that better?
Yeah,
Are
now,
you seeing the second?
uh-huh.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Carol.
So this is a drawing from before I started the course. And you saw the lichen. This is the site that I chose to bury my paper. And the paper is under the leaves and the snow. And I was very interested in what species of plants, there are oak and maple and cedar, and how that was going to affect things. And also the seasonal change was important to me because it was coming into spring. So for the research project, I decided to bury small sheets of paper. They're about 5 by 8. And this was uncovered after 2 weeks of them being, I call it enterrement, which means buried in French. But I just like the term enterrement because it has the word terre in it, which is actually the earth. So after I dried those, then I drew on them. And I chose to use sustainable natural foraged inks. So there's a rust ink and buckthorn ink. And the line is water soluble graphite. I haven't started my making my own inks now, but I am going to. These are inks from other suppliers. So as a final project, I decided to push it further and bury larger sheets of paper. And now we're into the spring. And this is what the same site looked like 2 weeks ago when I uncovered the paper. And these larger sheets of paper were buried for 5 weeks instead of 2 weeks. So when I started to uncover them, I realized it was raining at the time when I uncovered them. I'm sort of calling it harvesting them because I needed time for them to dry before I could draw on them so that they were finished for today. I was a little surprised by how much degradation there was done to the paper in some of them, even though they were there for the whole length of time. It depended where they were on the slope, how much water I think that they retained, and so they stuck to the ground more. And when I pulled them up, I left bits of paper on the ground. This is 100% cotton rag paper. These sheets are 18 inches by 18 inches. And I laid them on, these are, you know, recycling bags, and they just happen to be blue. And when I looked at them, I saw these spaces left that reminded me of lakes, and the whole piece reminded me of a map. And I'm very interested in the macro and micro in terms of how we view the world. Lichen is a really interesting metaphor for that. So here the papers are dry a couple of days later. My plan was to draw them as one drawing, put all the 4 sheets together and draw them as one drawing. And that's what I started to do, but realized that they weren't integrating as well as I wanted to do. So then I went to just 3 sheets. I just picked the sheets that I liked the best. So that's in the studio on the floor. I'm just observing them at that point and figuring out what materials and how I'm going to start mark making. And this is the result. So these are, this is an 18 by 18 inch square. I've used natural pigment crayon and inks, and again, water soluble graphite and charcoal. So that's, and then I wanted to experiment with how much that blue coming through in the holes sort of added to it. So I actually painted a piece of paper, the same type of paper blue, to give it a background. So those are the 3 sheets, and these are some details. The drawing relates to a topic that I'm investigating a lot, which someone else had mentioned as well, is tree rings and fingerprints. I've been doing that for the last year. And those are my details. And that's it.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm actually feeling quite emotional myself, just with the theme of transformation that keeps coming up, and literally and metaphorically going into the ground. And we talked a lot about composting and as part of the process of transformation, and how the coming back into the earth is yields new life that grows from there, and learning that Susie Govlick's memorial is happening right now as well, as all part of that. And okay, so next we have, and I believe this may be our last participant today to present, is Tracy.
Hi, I'm going to try to be less of a Luddite this time. Hopefully this will work. Okay, sorry, somehow it seems to have vanished. Give me 1 second, please. I had it all set up.
Also, just as a reminder, from here we'll be moving into questions from anybody, the participants and our guests that are here. So if you might want to start percolating on some questions you might have for either particular presenters or the group as a whole.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, great, Tracy.
Okay. So just like everyone else, really thanks so much to Anna and Patricia for making this happen. It's been such a great learning experience. So thank you so much. My final project was inspired, thanks to Jason, to the Show Your Stripes graphic that he shared with us in the last session. I had gone through and really tore apart my whole encaustic process and figured out how at each stage I could make it more sustainable. So I wanted my project to actually be creating something with encaustic. And Jason showed us this image that was created by Professor Ed Hawkins at the University of Reading, which showed basically 1860 to the present, visually what was happening with global warming without numbers or words. So the first thing I did was to recreate that graphic with a single walk from my house to the art supply store and my own trash. And I gathered, you can see here, it's all man-made. There's actually masks and trash and COVID tests and all kinds of things from the world, sadly, only in one walk, where I recreated that visual. And then I wanted to create, I took the visual and I separated it into 6 sections, and I was going to follow the palette that was provided exactly. And I started to create with it, and then I realized it's not my palette. And this is the first time ever created something which was be considered conceptual art. I had always just worked from my aesthetic. And I realized sort of in this process that even though I was trying to do something conceptual, it still needed to work with my aesthetic and not be the palette designated by someone else. So I created my own palette, obviously the same basic colors, but colors that felt more pleasing to me and that I felt I could work with. So then I really started to think about, was it just using those colors to communicate and translate the Show Your Stripes, or could I say more? Was there more that was important to me than just communicating in sort of a palatable way to the world about the change in temperature, or could I say more? Were there more issues that I cared about? So this is where I came out. So I'll just read this piece to you. It says, "Let's chat about global warming is my effort to build upon the Show Your Stripes graphic. I created a tactile dimensional piece that engages the viewer and encourages discussion about what we as individuals and as a community can do to reduce the effects of climate change. The piece was created with upcycled single-use plastic bags to draw attention to the long-lasting damaging effects that plastics are having on our environment. In addition, the enhanced lines in the paintings are a metaphor for the environmental injustice, including the proliferation of climate change that systematically impacts communities of color and low-income communities in the US and around the world." So this is the final piece. They are 6 12-inch by 12-inch boards that are the most eco-friendly boards available on the market. One needs to use a hard surface when doing encaustic. And the piece was created by using encaustic paint and recycled onion bags to create layers and layers and layers of texture. And then using oil stick to press into the line to enhance the line, as I said, to create that metaphor. So here's a little close-up of some of the pieces. And as you can see, the color begins to move from dark blue to lighter blue to a pink and then to the red at the end. And so what's next for me is that I've submitted this series to the Kiwanis Art Walk, which is an opportunity where potentially thousands of people will see the work and begin to have a chat about global warming. And I appreciate in the beginning of this class, we had a discussion about how one communicates their message, and people talked about sort of living your message, and people talked about sharing your own message rather than being pedantic. And so the title of the piece, Let's Chat About Global Warming, sort of spoke to that idea of, I wanted to try to engage people without bashing them over the head, to start talking about issues that I saw that were important. And that's what I have.
Thanks, Tracy. It's so cool to see. I love it when one student is inspired by something that they see in another student's work, and there's like a dialogue that starts to happen. That's a visually striking piece that you ended up with. Especially knowing the context behind it and what inspired it and what data it's coming from. It also struck me that it reminds me of how we're so politically divisive in our country right now, and kind of the shifts between like Republican to Democrat on this like scale, and yet we're entangled and connected on this scale. So now I would love to open it up for questions or comments.
I would just like to quickly say, Tracy, I have been struggling with that color palette myself the entire time I work on the project. It's just something about it is it's just too childlike palette or not sophisticated or something. So I haven't solved that part of it myself in my project either. So
Totally agree. When I got the pinks and baby blues, it reminded me of my like sorority Jewish youth group from like when I was 12, and it really started to make me shiver. So agreed. Thank you though.
I have a question.
Please.
Jason, the aerial images, were those colors manipulated at all, or is that how they were shot?
yeah, they're manipulated a bit. They were a little too, I don't know. In their original form, the browns and the earth tones were just felt too literal, and so I was experimenting to shift the colors the least I could and make them feel a little more painterly. So I had some winter images that I did that were different, where there was some snow on the ground and the colors were more blue. And so I shifted it in that direction. Those were not that way, but I did have some similar images that were naturally more blue. So I shifted that direction.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they're beautiful
Thank
and stark too.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Martha? Martha? Oh, you're on mute.
Well, thank you so much. One more amazing presentation. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Anyway, the question is for Michel Gagnon. I heard, is he here?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that there is going to be a forest bathing workshop, something about forest bathing. So I was wondering if it's going to be for just a particular group of people, or if it's anybody can join.
Anybody it's not on Zoom, it's live. Anybody in the world can join. It's on Salt Spring Island. If you're familiar with Salt Spring Island, you live in Vancouver or or Vancouver Island, Victoria. You can take the ferry over.
So is it good? So I live in the desert. I live in Lancaster, California.
Oh my
And
God, that's
yeah,
quite
yeah.
far.
So and I just miss. I'm so happy that in 1 month from now I'm going to be in France, and I miss the forest. I miss the forest. It's terrible.
Mhm.
But anyway, but I'm very happy to be here too. So I was wondering, is it going to be something on Zoom, or is it going to be something real, or what?
It's going to be real live. The reason I don't go to Zoom is that I would probably blow it from a technological perspective. And so the nature club, which I belong to, they like, it makes sense if you're in the nature to make things live as much as you can in spite of COVID.
So would it be possible to join the group? I'm not sure I understand. Could I?
I'm sorry.
Could
Go
I?
ahead.
Could I come to that place and join the group? Is it possible?
It's on May 27th.
Oh, May 20th. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, but
Mm.
I will. I'll try to get. If you send the contact, you get the contact to me. I'll ask the presenter to contact you
Okay.
and she may be able to help you, or she may be able to provide you some insight into how you can get into forest bathing. So,
Okay. Thank you very
but
much.
I can do that. Because I would have to put the site, my email somewhere. But
Okay.
maybe I can put it on the, I can get my partner here to help me put it on. I will put it in the chat. How's
Chat.
that?
I'm going to
Yes.
put my email too on the
Okay.
chat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, and Martha, maybe you could set up a forest bathing group where you live. Are there any other questions or comments about the work that was presented, or I'd also be curious to hear from anybody in the class, what your next steps are and what kind of coming to this final conclusion today, where you want to take your practice and what new things have opened up for you that you want to keep exploring or learn more about, which a few of you have spoken to in your presentations, but just if there's anything extra that comes up that you like to share.
I think for me, and I think I'm really sorry, I don't remember who it was in the last presentation who recommended, I think they live in Chicago, this person from the group. Anyway, but I'm really thinking about how I can move past my art making into activism to, I think, my art making has an potential to get people talking and get issues out there, but I think I want to think about some of those issues that are really important to me and see how I can become an activist in those areas rather than just making art about them or in conjunction with making art. So I've been trying to do a lot of reading about the areas that are most important to me and figure out the best way to help make change.
Gracie, I've been thinking very similarly, and I added a line to it's the second sentence in my bio now, partly for myself. But it says Lindsay considers himself a poetic activist using his art to drive social change. So I want to try to make it a more central part of not only my work, but how I talk about myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Belinda?
Yeah, I found it really inspiring. And towards the end, I realized I found, because I kind of had a hard time labeling myself for a long time, what practice, like a movement or what I felt like I really clicked with. But then I realized through this that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm an eco-feminist artist. And then it was just that kind of like, so I ordered some books online. So they're all used, but I got one of them last night. And it's like, just reading about ecofeminist philosophy and thinking, because it was bigger in the 70s and then it I think kind of faded out. And so that was like really kind of a revelation for me. And then the other thing that I've been working, I didn't put in my slide presentation, but I'm excited about it, but it's been kind of a struggle to make it sustainable. I built a little gallery, kind of like the little libraries that people have in front of their houses where they do exchanges. So I built it, and then I made a little like green roof for it, so I can put like a moss bed on it and put like a little sculpture garden in it. And we have a lot of high school students that walk by our house, so I'm going to put that in the front yard. And it was a struggle to I used mostly things I already had, but then when it came to making it waterproof, it was a little bit harder to kind of figure out. So I ended up using some kind of a flex rubber that they use for boats and to seal to keep it waterproof. But I did find also some alternatives to plexiglass that are more sustainable. So I realized in this process that, they're really coming up with a lot of things that are, they say are more sustainable than traditional things that we've been using, which was really great to kind of realize and think, oh, don't just always just go for the thing that or you're used to. They're coming up with lots of things. So that's very, very, very good thing. So.
Yeah, design is catching up. And
Yeah.
to the point that was made earlier about like art practices. Oh, I think somebody just started sharing their screen.
That's me. I'm
Oh.
sorry. I'm getting mixed up. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. To the point that was made earlier about how our art practices might start becoming socially engaged practices or environmentally engaged practices. I think that's sort of why I am teaching this class as an artist, because I'm actively like asking, what is the function of art today, right? And I think that that's something that we talked about this in one of our classes in depth, but just a big takeaway is thinking about how we're on the receiving end of thinking of art as this sort of business model of like, buy and sell and show art in this way. But I think that setup and the way that art has functioned historically in the Western canon is not really serving us anymore, as we have to start recognizing how to live in right relation with the non-human and human entities around us. And so I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with all of you in your humble and like earnest approach to investigating that in your practices. And I know I'm not the only one here who has learned so much from each of you. So I just want to thank everybody for really showing up and giving a shit, and and putting the work in, and continuing to explore what this means, because it's something that we're all asking about. It's not something that we have answers around. It's like we actively have to start creating a culture around care and interbeing. And so I'll ask if there because I'll ask if there's any other questions anybody has before I wrap up. We still have time if anybody wants to talk about anything that feels, yeah, Rebecca.
I'll just say, kind of piggybacking on what you're just saying, I mean, for the longest time, I held my art practice separate from my kind of the other side of my life, which was my reforestation efforts and my cultivating of native trees. And then a couple of years ago, when I was asked to do a show kind of addressing like, what is it you're doing with the trees? I found that when I integrated the two, that's just when the magic happened. And the gallery show I'm in right now addresses like Los Angeles's disappearing tree canopy, and just the richness that that brings to your work is really phenomenal if you can make that connection.
Mm. And we should be generous with ourselves too, because sometimes it's like an awkward path to traverse until you find the right fits or the right collaborators in that work.
I think if I could just say one of the things that's happened as like a result of this class and listening to everyone speak about their practices and processes, and then, you know, paying attention to the micro worlds that my head is now wrapping around, is just sort of that reminder that things take the time they take, and that nature really is the original creator. So, I mean, as artists, we are creators, obviously. And it's just interesting for me to take myself out of that kind of productive, Western, capitalist, commercial thinking, and just be with the creation and the growth and the noticing and observing and learning in the tiny little slow ways that I do. And when you see, you know, for me, like when I see how a seed grows, and often very slowly, it just reminds me that, you know, it might take centuries, which I don't have personally in my lifespan, but when, you know, just seeing the and thinking about time and deep time has really been helpful for me to just not worry about production versus process.
Mm. Getting out of the driver's seat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's surprisingly grounding and sane.
I read something the other day about how artwork with a message, you know, basically having a message about your work doesn't make it better. Like it still has to be good. Like if your work is being evaluated, this was from an art critic, so I say that with a grain of salt, but it basically was saying that the message behind it, you know, doesn't make the work better or not. Like it has to be good on its own. And I was thinking a lot about that, and thinking about all of us here have decided that we want our work to be more than just the work, that we've decided to actually make our work harder to make, because we have embraced this message and these other issues that are important to us. So I think we could see today, like there's a lot of beautiful, just purely aesthetically beautiful work happening here. But I think that the adding on of the message, although it makes it harder, for me, it makes it more meaningful. And if that's not important to an art critic, well, c'est la vie. But I think it's just interesting to see sort of, we're all choosing, like we're choosing a harder path. So bravo to everyone for choosing the harder path.
Tracy, sweet.
Thank you, Tracy. And with that, I want to just, so thank you to everybody who joined in today as guests, and the many compliments that you paid in the chat to all of the participants, to all the presenters. And I will send a follow-up email with this recording to the class. And I think I'm going to set up a Discord server too, where we continue to exchange information, and I'll throw in every new class I have the students in there to keep cross communication happening and continue to share resources. And with that, I bid you all adieu, and I hope you have a great Sunday afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you, guys. Stay
Thank
in
you,
touch.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna.
Awesome
you.
class.
Take care.
Thanks for joining.
I'm gonna miss you guys.
I know, stay in touch.
Thank you,
Carol, I
everybody.
love
Thank
following you on Instagram.
Me too. You
Seeing
as
her
well.
bury all her papers. I love it. Bye, everybody.